Hi, I have resoluted to not take more than let's say 15 minutes for this video because this is a very small chapter, a very I would say there's not much new to learn here. Everything is something that we already know, something that we already see panning out around us throughout our day. And most of us is, normal common sense. It's nothing new. There are just some buzzwords here and there, some terms here and there that we need to recall. And I think this chapter is just easy marks. It's going to fetch you great marks if you just read it once. So let's get started with it. Let's not spend a lot of time. So the chapter is economics of regulation. I can go LOS by LOS. So it starts with why do we really need regulatory intervention? The simple answer is because there are information frictions and because there are externalities. So these are the two what I say terms that you need to remember here. When they say information frictions, they mean that some participants have more information than others. So regulations need to exist to remove this information as asymmetry. Then another is externalities, which means that actions of one person can affect a party that did not choose to incur the cost or benefit. For example, let's say there's one polluter, but one major polluter, but the cost of that pollution can be borne by other people as well, which is why at times governments and regulations and self-regulated bodies, self-regulated organizations need to step in for the interest of everybody else. This LOS also talks about how weak competition can lead to fewer choices, which is very obvious, which we have been seeing here and there, that if there are big monopolies, if there are not enough alternatives in the market, then the seller has more control over the price. So governments and regulators also take care that there are healthy competition. Then social objectives are to be achieved via provision of public goods. So public goods are the goods that are equally available for everybody. uh, so the whole idea is that it should be available for everybody without being unavailable to anybody else. So there has to be enough public resources and public goods present for everybody to be able to access them. Next is explain the purposes of regulating commerce and financial markets. We have seen here and there some questions crop up from this. It's a very simple concept altogether. So, what it says is that one is you need to regulate the commerce, and second is you need to regulate the financial markets. Okay, and then it talks about what are the purposes of regulating, what are the outcomes of regulating commerce, and what are the outcomes of regulating financial markets. So, when talking about regulating commerce, it mostly provides a framework to facilitate decision making. It can be about company laws, tax laws, contract laws, then dispute resolution system, bankruptcy laws. It mostly revolves around that. And when it comes to financial market, includes regulation of securities market, regulation of financial institutions, and it is very critical to, like, one major goal is to prevent the failure of financial system and to maintain the integrity of the market, so that the trust of the investors in the market is maintained, and also there's not a failure of the financial system, particularly because financial systems are linked to each other, and failure of one can lead to a large scale failure of other financial systems as well. So under financial markets, there come securities markets and financial institutions that are regulated. Um, Under securities markets, most of the regulations are about either disclosure requirements or they're mostly to protect the small investors, which is why you'll see that hedge funds and private equity funds have far less regulatory burden than an insurance company or a pension fund. So that is because the regulations are always formed around protecting the small investors. Second would be regulation of financial institutes. It's also called prudential supervision. So prudential supervision is basically looking after that the financial system does not fall down. The risks that are taken are justified. So there would be things like diversification of assets and adequate capital base, then risk management activities. So that is all that falls under prudential supervision. Now one thing that has been one term that I've seen here and there in the questions but has not really been very transparent in Schwezer or in, I think, curriculum as well, is moral hazard. It's more of a I'm sure we've already read about this somewhere or other. Moral hazard is generally a term that's bounced around a lot in insurance world. So what it means is that once you don't have the risk, then you do not then your risk taking ability and behavior increases. If let's say my house is insured for fire, I would be very careless about keeping inflammable items here. Similarly, if a bank knows that there's a insurance for for whatever risks I'm taking, then they will take excessive risk because the risk has transferred to another party. So this is called moral hazard. I have seen it crop up in some of the questions, so I think it's a good term to know. Then we go to anti-competitive behaviors, which is antitrust regulations. So antitrust regulations are nothing but when, let's say, two huge uh, market players are merging, and there's a possibility that the market share of this newer one would be too huge and would kill all the other competition, would have huge economies of scale and great pricing power. Then sometimes regulators and governments intervene and do not let mergers like that happen. So an analyst who's looking at such mergers should be aware of the antitrust laws in both the in wherever the companies are based, and should be reading about them. Then it talks about different types of regulations and different types of regulators. So when we talk about regulations, there have been a lot of questions that I've seen in mock tests and here and there about this. These are regulations, the types of regulations. So that's statutes, then there's administrative regulations, then there is judicial law. So statutes are something that have been enforced by a legislative bodies. For example, the Companies Law, the uh, Contracts Act, and all those. Then administrative regulations are basically one that help in implementation of these statutes. For example, that we know that Companies Law asks the companies to give some disclosures quarterly, right? So an administrative regulation would be the format in which the disclosure should be, or different nuances about that disclosures. Then judicial laws are something that has been established by the finding of a court. Alright, so let's say that there is a law, but there is ambiguity about one of the sections, and there has been a similar suit, and the court said that okay, this is what we're going to do about it, and that also becomes a law. So these are judicial laws. Moving to the type of regulators, I would say when this is kind of important because I have seen questions on these here and there. Then regulators are they can be government agencies, or independent regulators. Apart from this, there are SRPs and SROs. These are self regulated bodies, these are self regulatory organizations. The only difference is that SROs are recognized by the government. Both of these are independently funded, mostly by the proceeds from their membership proceeds from their members, and which is why they are a part of independent regulators. They're not government agencies. But SRO is recognized by government, SRBs are not. Apart from that, SROs provide mostly standards, and you know they basically provide public goods in form of standards and regulations. Apart from that, there are outside bodies which are not regulators themselves, but their products are referenced by regulators, such as FASB, all these accounting standards boards, and all that. Okay. Then describe the uses of self-regulation in financial markets. So it talks about how FINRA, or I don't know, whatever you want to call that, is an SRO which is recognized by SEC, and the primary objective is to maintain fairness of US capital markets. Similarly, this kind of SRBs can be found globally. The next section talks about the next section talks about some really interesting concepts. One of that is regulatory capture. So regulatory capture is nothing but let's say I let's say there are 20 market participants for whatever, let's say spice market. Out of these, there are four major shops that sell spices. Now, when a spice association or a spice regulation board is made, let's call it SRB, Spice Regulation Board. So, people who sit on the board are actually two of these people. Then, out of these four major shops, there are four representatives that sit on the board. So, what happens is that basically the regulation board is made up of participants in a way, which is why they would never want to, pass out any regulation that would shrink their business size, or make it difficult for them to have business. But sometimes regulations like that are required. So, a situation like this is called regulatory capture. Then we talk about regulatory competition. So what happens is when there are different jurisdiction, some of them can provide a more friendly business environment. For example, in US, different states have different regulations, and which is why somebody might want to set up business in another state, register that in another state, so that the regulations they fall under are lesser. Similarly, in Indian states, the taxations are different, and some laws that govern the businesses are different, which is why it's very easy to just migrate your business to the state where the regulations are lesser. That would be regulatory competition and regulatory arbitrage. So regulatory arbitrage is whenever somebody finds a country or a state which has easier regulations and moves there. I mean, takes advantage of that opportunity. That would be regulatory arbitrage. And then it talks about how to avoid regulatory arbitrage. There needs to be a cooperation at global level, so that the regulatory frameworks are similar at all the places, especially for things like pollution and financial things that also affect small investors, the regulation should be coordinated globally. Then there are tools of regulatory intervention. So there is price mechanism. Price mechanism can be taxes, subsidies, fines, and all that. So wherever taxation is done, the businesses might shrink. Wherever subsidies are given, the big businesses might boom. Similarly for fines and rebates. So all these are come under price mechanism. Second is requiring certain activity. So something like disclosures that have to be made, quarterly statements that have to be given, or regulations that restrict the use of some certain raw materials, some certain chemicals because they are pollutants. So these are requiring certain activities. And third would be provision of public goods. So basically, regulators provide public goods or fund mm, some private projects. Let's say small businesses or medium-sized businesses are given some kind of opportunities by the regulators. So these are provision of public goods. Apart from that, newer kinds of regulations and regulatory tools come up all the time because there are new situations every time, and a tool of the past cannot surely be successful in a future event. So mostly it's a mix of all these three, or a completely new mechanism might also come, whatever regulators believe would make them reach their end goal. Next would be, I can see I have just 3 minutes because I thought that I want to do this video in 20 minutes, not more than that. So there would be cost benefit analysis. So what it says is that once a regulation has come in, there's a cost to the business, and there's sometimes also a benefit to the business. So cost to the business is, let's say I have to make a disclosure every 15 days. So I probably need a guy on my payroll who does that, or probably a lawyer who knows all of this regulation. But when I make this on time, I also get a subsidy of $200 every 15 days. So my net would be my cost minus benefit. A very simple concept basically. And so regulatory costs are of course difficult to assess before the regulations are put into place, because only after businesses start to practice that they're able to actually tell that what's going to happen, how is this going to affect me, which is why a lot of regulations also have a sunset clause which says that okay, we are implementing this for let's say a period of 1 year. After 1 year, the board would come back and reassess how the participants, how the market perceives of this law. Are the costs too high, are the benefits too low, and reassess them. And I think that is it. In case I've missed something, you think that there's some other important concept, do let me know. I can probably make a little addendum video for that. And all the best for the exam.